Hello, friends, and welcome back to Eclectic Knowledge and our series Compelling Stories for a Dinner Party. I'm your host, Christopher James, and tonight's stories are sure to pique your curiosity and inspire great conversation at your next dinner party. Tonight, we're talking about the creation of the potato chip under the American patriarchy, a war between the Australian military and some emus, and that time some young girls in England photographed real-life fairies. So grab some wine, butter some bread, and let's get into it. Our first story centers around the creation of a popular snack food and the oppressive patriarchy that turned that snack food into a global empire. This salty story begins in the early 19th century, in the heart of Saratoga Springs, New York, at the luxurious restaurant known as Moon's Lake House. Built in 1853 atop a bluff overlooking Saratoga Lake, Moon's Lake House quickly became the preeminent destination for dinner in the area. During the era before the electric light bulb, the primary meal of the day would be served around 2 p.m. After the large mid-afternoon meal, local patrons would stroll along the lake or take a carriage ride to end their day. This daily activity became known as the Carriage Parade, and for nearly 100 years the tradition carried on. And with that tradition, Moon's Lake House grew into a popular destination and became an iconic Saratoga Springs restaurant. The continued success of the restaurant was due in large part to the skilled but cantankerous head cook, George Speck. Speck, or Crumb as he became professionally known, was a local man from the Mohawk tribe. Though his full heritage is unclear, he was known to be of African American and Native American ancestry. During his youth, George Crumb had been a guide, a hunter, and a cook in the Adirondack Mountains of upstate New York. At some point around 1853, Crumb was hired by the newly built Moon's Lake House as a cook to prepare menu items for a discerning and demanding clientele. Legend claims that one day in 1853, a finicky customer complained that his order of fried potatoes were not prepared to his liking. He felt the potatoes were too thick and too soft, so he returned them to the kitchen multiple times. Annoyed and frustrated by the constant nitpicking, George Crumb decided to play a little prank on his demanding customer. He sliced the potatoes paper thin, fried them to a crisp, and seasoned them generously with salt, then sent his creation out to the customer's table. This playful act of defiance backfired, and the customer loved the crispy fried potatoes. Soon, word spread about Crumb's potatoes, and intrigued customers became loyal fans. The item was quickly added to the Moon's Lake House menu and named Saratoga Chips. The menu item became an instant hit, and before long, the chips were being packaged and sold at restaurants, fairs, and sporting events across the area. In very short order, the Saratoga chip would become known as the potato chip, and it would be turned into a snack-time goldmine. That is what the legend claims, but is that what really happened? Probably not. Chances are the historic story has been falsified. Though the legend is often quoted and has been passed down as canon and truth, the reality is there is evidence to suggest the endearing and enduring story is not entirely true. A look through historic documents, obituaries, and other published accounts from the day reveal pieces of the story that don't quite fit into place. For example, an 1892 article from the New York Tribune about George Crumb's famous restaurant called Crumb's Place does not mention the invention of the potato chip. Also consider, in 1893, Crumb commissioned his own biography, a complete and fully detailed story about his life, which also does not mention the invention of the potato chip. And for the final nail in the coffin, so to speak, a widely published version of Crumb's obituary also has no mention of the potato chip creation. Let's not even mention the fact that Crumb himself never claimed to be the creator of the potato chip. In reality, that achievement was not assigned to Crumb until years after his death, when a local legend in Saratoga Springs began to spring up. The legend was then memorialized in several tourism campaigns for the town of Saratoga Springs during the 1970s, and with those campaigns, the misinformation became the truth. So now the obvious question. If George Crumb did not invent the famous Saratoga chip, who did? Well, another glance through historic documents reveals information that suggests, in reality, it was his sister, Catherine Wicks, who likely invented Crumb's famous potato chips. In her obituary from a local newspaper, the Saratogian, in 1924, it states quite conclusively that, quote, the sister of George Crumb, Mrs. Catherine Wicks, died at the age of 102 and was the cook at Moon's Lake House. She first invented and fried the famous Saratoga chips. And in a 1932 interview with the same local paper, her grandson confirmed the creator of Saratoga chips was his grandmother, Catherine Wicks. Her personal account of the story is that of a simple task taking a dramatic turn. While also working as a cook at Moon's Lake House alongside her brother, one day, Catherine was slicing potatoes when a thin piece of potato accidentally fell into the pan of hot frying oil. Catherine fished the potato piece out of the oil with a fork and set it aside on a plate. Her brother George tasted it and, once salted, became very excited about their newfound snack. And thus, the potato chip was born. Now, this information doesn't mean George Crumb had nothing to do with the potato chip creation. Quite the opposite. There is no question that it was George Crumb who brought the Saratoga chip to the masses. Once added to the menu at Moon's Lake House, Saratoga chips took off. The owners of Moon's Lake House were the first to mass produce and package the chips for easy consumption. And it didn't take long before high society found themselves dipping into paper cones and paper boxes, eating the Saratoga chips like they were peanuts or candies while at the racetrack or walking down Broadway Avenue. By 1860, George Crumb would leave Moon's Lake House to open his own successful restaurant called Crumb's Place. There, customers would be greeted with a basket of potato chips at each table, ensuring his new local customers also fell in love with the fried snack. Eventually, other players moved into the potato chip market. These new players, with names like Herman Lay and Laura Scudder, captured the majority market and went on to become part of a global snack food empire. Today, in the U.S. alone, potato chips generate over $10 billion in revenue annually. But as we know without a doubt, the empire wouldn't exist without the achievements and success of George Crumb and Catherine Wicks, and the creation of Saratoga chips, all paving the way for future potato chip success. We'd like to know what you think. Why do you think George Crumb has been credited with his sister's achievement? Was it the standard patriarchy? The power of myth and historic confusion? Was race a contributing factor? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Our story for the second course tonight is a piece of history from Down Under, and it's as bizarre as it is captivating. It's the story of the Great Emu Wars, a tale which pits the might of the Australian military against nature's resilience. So top off your glass and settle in for a tale of feathers, firearms, and futility. Our odyssey unfolds in 1932, amidst the harsh clasp of the Great Depression. Western Australia's wheat belt became a battleground, not against economic hardship alone, but against an unlikely foe, a horde of 20,000 emus. Veterans turned farmers on these lands found their crops under siege by the colossal birds, drawn to the cleared lands for their bountiful harvest. In desperation, the farmers turned to the Australian government, pleading for military intervention. And so Sir George Pierce, the Minister of Defense, sanctioned a most unconventional military operation. The plan? Deploy soldiers armed with World War I-era Lewis machine guns to quell the avian invaders. The man tasked with this peculiar mission was Major G.P.W. Meredith, who, along with his men, ventured into the wheat belt armed with 2 Lewis guns and a staggering 10,000 rounds of ammunition. Their foe? Emus, a species seemingly innocuous yet about to prove astonishingly formidable. The campaign's first engagement was set for early November, but nature, it seems, had other plans. Unseasonal rains scattered the emu forces far and wide, delaying the operation. It wasn't until the rains ceased and the birds regrouped that the soldiers found their opportunity. On November 2nd, the first encounter took place. Meredith's men positioned themselves, anticipating an easy victory. But the emus, perhaps sensing the impending threat, refused to play the part of easy targets. They splintered into small groups, their erratic movements confounding the soldiers' aim. Despite this initial setback, Meredith was undeterred. A few days later, near a local dam, over 1,000 emus were spotted. This time, the soldiers waited, allowing the birds to draw near. But as the guns finally blazed, one jammed after felling a mere dozen birds, and the rest scattered, unscathed. In the days that followed, the emus' guerrilla tactics became even more apparent. Packs of emus, each led by a towering figure with black plumes, seemed to employ strategies that baffled the military men. Meredith even attempted to mount a gun on a truck for a mobile assault, but the plan faltered as the vehicle couldn't keep pace with the agile birds. By November 8th, with thousands of rounds spent and the emu ranks seemingly unbroken, the operation was deemed a failure. The media lambasted the endeavor, and the government, bowing to public ridicule, withdrew the military forces. Yet the farmers' plight continued, and in desperation, a second offensive was launched later in November. This time, with more strategic planning and perhaps a touch of luck, the soldiers found modest success, claiming nearly 1,000 emu casualties over several weeks. But as the dust settled, it became clear the Great Emu War was more than a mere battle against birds. It was a humbling chapter in human history, a testament to nature's indomitable will. And in case you're wondering, today there are estimated to be up to 725,000 wild emus in Australia. Well, there's some food for thought for your next dinner party. How do you interpret the lessons of the Great Emu War? And what stories of human-wildlife conflict resonate with you? We'd love to know what you think. Share your reflections in the comments below. Our final story for the evening is upon us, and it is sure to enlighten and enhance the conversation over dessert. After all, who doesn't love a good fairy tale? In the shadow of the terrifying turmoil of World War I, a tale as delicate as gossamer wings began to weave its magic in the small village of Cottingley, England. This is not just the story of 2 young cousins, Elsie Wright and Frances Griffiths, and their enchanting encounter with fairies. It's a narrative that delves deep into the human psyche, exploring the realms of belief, deception, and the desperate yearning for a glimmer of hope amidst despair. Our journey begins in 1917, in a world gripped by conflict and loss. In this setting, Elsie, 16, and Frances, 9, claim to have discovered a hidden realm at the garden's end, a sanctuary where fairies danced away from the world's sorrows. With their camera as their confidant, they captured what seemed like fleeting moments with these ethereal beings. But what started as a playful venture would soon spiral into a controversy that entangled families and divided opinions. The revelation of these 5 photographs stirred a whirlwind within the Wright household. Elsie's mother, a believer in the mystical, saw the images as a miraculous glimpse into the unseen. Yet Arthur Wright, a man of practicality and reason, dismissed them as mere child's play, the result of his daughter's artistic prowess and not fairy visitations. This discord within the family mirrored the larger societal split between those yearning for wonder and those grounded in skepticism. The turning point came when the photographs reached the Theosophical Society in 1919, a group devoted to uncovering the hidden dimensions of life and spirit. Their exhibition of the fairy photographs catapulted Elsie and Francis from the realms of family squabbles to the center of a national debate on the existence of the supernatural. Enter Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, a towering figure in literature and an ardent spiritualist. His endorsement of the photographs as authentic evidence of otherworldly realms lent the tale an air of credibility that was hard to dismiss. Doyle's fascination with the Cottingley Fairies wasn't just about proving the existence of fairies, it was a crusade to validate the spiritual over the material. Edward Gardner, a prominent theosophist, became an instrumental figure in this unfolding drama. His unwavering belief in the photographs as harbingers of a new spiritual era led him to Cottingley, where he equipped Elsie and Francis with cameras, hoping to further unveil this mystical world. The resultant photographs, particularly the final two taken during Gardner's visit, added layers to the enigma, challenging the boundaries between the seen and the unseen. But the fabric of this fairy tale began to unravel decades later. In 1983, Elsie and Francis, now seasoned by life's trials, confessed. The fairies were artful creations, born from cardboard, imagination, and a pair of scissors. Yet in their confession lay a nuanced truth. They had indeed seen fairies, they claimed, but the photographs were a mere attempt to materialize their ethereal encounters. This revelation painted a complex portrait of Elsie and Francis, not as mere pranksters, but as captives of their own creation. Trapped by the fairy tale they had woven and the unexpected endorsement by Conan Doyle, they found themselves ensnared in a narrative that had spiraled beyond their control. Their initial intent, a simple ploy to convince their parents of the fairies' existence, had transformed into a worldwide sensation, a beacon for those seeking solace in the magical amidst the mechanized horrors of war. And with that, my friends, our stories for the evening have come to an end. We hope you enjoyed these chronicles this evening. It's not often you hear about the enchanting world of Cottingley, the laughable lot of the Emu Wars, and the progenitor of the potato chip, all in one night. But that's what we did. If you enjoyed yourself, please like and share and leave a comment below. We hope to see you at our table again next time. Until then, my friends, may your gatherings always be eclectic and full of compelling stories. Good night.